When Redfall was first announced and I saw the reveal trailer, like many of you, I thought this was going to be another Left 4 Dead style game. Just a horde mode shooter where you lay waste to dozens and dozens of brain-dead enemies. But Redfall seems to be something much more, and is actually a very different game to what I originally thought it was going to be. Instead of another Back 4 Blood style of game, Redfall is an open world game that's story driven, that allows players to experience it in either single player, or if you have friends, you could team up and take them with you as you take on the vampires. Now, before we take a deep dive into this city filled to the brim with creatures of the night, I would like to take a brief moment and welcome anyone new to the channel. If you are new, please consider subscribing. I got a ton of stuff in the works that I would love to share with you all. Also, if you do happen to enjoy the video, let me know by dropping a like. Anyways guys, we got a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, I don't know about you, but this game is turning out to be not what I expected at all. I mean, watching the footage of the first trailer, this definitely looks like a generic Left 4 Dead clone with class abilities, but apparently this is not the case at all. In fact, the first trailer was so confusing that during an interview, director Harvey Smith actually said, "It's totally understandable for someone to come to that conclusion. There are 4 playable characters, you can play together cooperatively, and you're going against the undead. But in terms of the way that you play and experience Redfall, it's not like those games at all. Redfall is more like loading into Farcry." It makes me wonder why they picked such a confusing trailer that will leave so many people with the wrong impression about what this game actually is. But let's move on from that and talk about what this game really does offer. Alright, now why this game is open world, like he says, you're loading into Far Cry. From my understanding, it's going to be a much smaller scope world than you would come to expect in your typical Ubisoft game. Redfall has no vehicles offered to the player, so it's being made with the expectation that the entire world has to be reasonably sized due to the fact that you're going to have to explore it via foot. Now, while this may be off-putting to some, I actually prefer this. I prefer a small, dense world. I am so sick of giant open world games that just feel empty and dead. Too many games have this vast landscape for you to explore, but it ends up being completely boring, filled with meaningless side quests that end up feeling like a chore list that expects the player to do. So the fact that this is a smaller scope world is actually very good news to me. Arkane wants this world to feel like you're exploring a crappy tourist town based in New England. Something that feels familiar but has the DNA you would expect from an Arkane game. So something bigger than the space station in Prey, but not so gigantic that you feel like the world is just bare bones and generic. So while the atmosphere of this game actually sounds pretty cool, what about the enemies you'll be facing? After all, exploring is fun and all, but without a challenging foe to tackle, the game could just get monotonous. Well, luckily for us, they're providing some interesting enemies for us to face, so we should be taken care of in this department as well. That's right, in this game we'll be fighting creatures of the night, vampires. And don't worry, the developers have already stated that these will be monsters who feed on the blood of the weak to improve their power. So don't go in expecting Edward from Twilight. Instead, expect the type of vampire that you would see in the movie 30 Days of Night. I love this type of vampire. These are monsters, and I'm so sick of media and movies and games turning them into charming romantic lovers. Something that you would read in a crappy romance novel. And it's not just monsters with things that our heroes will have to worry about. We'll also be facing against cultists, a small dedicated army that actually worships the vampire, and they're ready to kill on sight and take out anyone who dares oppose their masters. So between the different types of vampires and the cultists, we should have some pretty interesting boss fights and enemy encounters if the developers have the right imagination and are able to pull this off. Having said that, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm taking on interesting opponents, I want interesting weapons to go along with that. So let's take a look at the arsenal we have access to in the game. So we're gonna have your average run-of-the-mill weapons, such as shotguns, assault rifles, and sniper rifles. But we're also getting some pretty cool, unique weapons as well. Since we're hunting vamps, the weapons in the game need to match that theme. And luckily for us, they do. We'll be getting things from a stake launcher to stab them in the heart, or a UV beam to burn them alive with sunlight. Things like that are what keep things interesting and fresh. And hopefully we have tons more of these unique weapons that we get to use and play with. So not only do we get access to all these cool different types of weapons, we're also going to have unique abilities that allow us to take on different approaches to different situations. For example, we use a raven to scout ahead, allowing us to see what's coming up, and so we could plan accordingly. Or we can use stealth to avoid combat altogether, or get to a good vantage point that gives us the edge over the bloodlusting monsters. Alright, I'm gonna keep it real. This game sounds way better than I originally thought it was going to be, and way more unique, but it's not all sunshines and rainbows. There are some things about this upcoming title that I think are really disappointing, and something I hope they do change before the launch of the game. So for some god-awful reason, they decided to go in the direction that story progression only applies to the host of the game. I hate this system. Why do co-op games even do this? For example, let's say you have several friends who pick the game up, or you're all playing on Game Pass together, and you start a game with a couple of buddies and you play for 4 hours. You just go on a binge and you make it so far. Now you all go back to work on Monday, or you get busy with school or life or whatever. If you want to play the character and progress in the story in single player or with a different set of friends, if you were not the host, you're going to have to start at the very beginning. What's even more confusing is their reasoning behind this. They actually came out and addressed this very issue, and this is what they had to say. Oh, I've been playing with you, but now I'm going to go play on my own. So I'm going to start playing through the campaign, but then I start hitting missions that I've already done. So for the flow of things, you want to have to redo those things. The story would be very confusing if you got to mission 8 and it said skip this one because you've already done it. This is just total nonsense. What would be better is if you couldn't join a session if they were further in the story than your character. Friends would have to join a session where the host is the player that is the least furthest in the campaign, but that way if they play for several hours and end up surpassing where they were originally, it should track for everyone. All this system does is actually discourage multiplayer with different sets of friends, or will make people just play the single player game because not all of us have people that we have easy access to, or you have friends that are busy and work full time and your schedules might not always line up. Plus, what's even more confusing is why your story progression does not track unless you're the host. Everything else does. Your character level, the weapons you find, the weapons you craft, all that will transfer over in between the different host sessions you join. So if you play with a buddy and you play for a long period of time, and then eventually you have to go and play on your own and you have to restart, wouldn't your character and weapons be so overpowered that the beginning of the game would feel boring? I'm not really sure how this will work, but no one's gonna want to go and play multiple missions over again just to get back to the point they were at originally. I don't know, I think this is a bad call, and I know the game was delayed, so hopefully this is something they changed or addressed in the last few months, or half a year actually, that they had to work on the game and we get a better system upon release. One more quick thing I want to bring up about the multiplayer aspect of this game, and I've seen this question asked a lot online, and I looked and I could not find a definitive answer whether it will have this feature or not, is matchmaking. For a game that's supposed to be drop in, drop out co-op and heavily focused on multiplayer, it's weird that it doesn't have this feature, at least not confirmed yet. So hopefully we get some more information about this soon and we could actually know if the game will have matchmaking or not. I'm gonna be honest, it's very confusing why you would make something that you go play with friends but not have a basic feature like matchmaking. So hopefully it does get confirmed. Like I said, it might have it, but I couldn't find anywhere where they discuss this at all. So if you guys know if it has it, let me know in the comments down below. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, that's all I really gotta say about this game. I definitely want to hear what you all think about this. Are you excited about this game, or do you think it'll be a complete dud? Let me know in the comments down below. As for me, I'm pretty excited to play this game. Hopefully the world is small and dense with tons of stuff to do and interesting things to explore. Like I said, I hate giant open world games that are just boring and tedious. But it seems this is going in a different direction, which is super cool. But having said that, I actually got a ton of work to do, so I gotta get back to the grind, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.